Welcome everyone to the Sage's Tea Parties. These are like 3 little mini events that I'm running through this Northern Hemisphere winter, and contemplative moments where I'm inviting you to have a cup of tea with me, or a cup of coffee, or whatever your favorite beverage is, even if it's water, or it could be a glass of wine, whatever you fancy. Go and get it now. And while I'm preambling, put the kettle on, and I have my thermos here, and I have some amazing tea. People ask me what tea. This one is called Emerald Heart, and it's one of my favorites and my team's favorites. And I think it's a Lu Bao, if you know about teas. And but when you make it strong, it tastes like a pu'er, and I like it strong. So it's deep and lustrous and autumnal. And if you don't know about teas or old teas, because this one is an old tea, then it's a fermented black tea from China, from Yunnan. And I drink these pu'ers a lot. And I try and find really fine ones. And for every one I drink, there's probably 100 I've thrown out. And so I'm very choosy and a bit of a tea snob, I'm afraid. But this one is just beautiful, and it's well named Emerald Heart, and it's a nice way to... I don't know how you can get hold of it, but if you're interested in tea, there are excellent, it's a whole journey, refined Chinese teas. So I'm going to have a cup just to get me started. And the subject tonight, as Rumi said, the subject tonight is love. But the subject tonight is the body as a means of healing society. So I'm going to just let that sit in the background of whatever is bubbling up spontaneously. And really, I wanted to share with you in these little tea parties some extracts from my new book, The Sage, and which is not published yet, but it will be coming out sometime, probably, if I'm honest, probably the beginning of 2027, because it needs a big edit. It's a big book. It's over 800 pages. It's taken me 5 or 6 years. It's a Gene Keys I Ching, and if you know the Gene Keys, it adds a deeper layer to the Gene Keys book, and which you might already think is too big. But what it does is it names the individual lines like an original I Ching. There's 384 of them. I'm going to tell you a little story about how they began and how the book began in a moment. Parts of it are going, it's been written in a fractal way, so parts of it are going into a future app. I mean, obviously they will stay in the book, but the bits of it going into our Gene Keys app, and bits of it are going into our Gene Keys Golden Path programs, which I'll mention also later on. So, and I've also got a load of my books around me, that I like 20 years worth really of writing. I'm surrounded by some books here and some books here. I'm just going to be quite spontaneous and weave and pick little bits of fragments of some of the teachings and let them speak. And if there's a bit of time left over at the end, if you want to ask a question, you can send it in, and our amazing Gene Keys team will field those and send them to me on my phone. But we'll see. I want to just share spontaneously, and I don't know how long that's going to take. So get yourself settled in and make yourself comfortable. I've lit some nice incense here, like a Mongolian incense that I love. And this is my little ceremony that I do, usually outside in the mornings, very early in the mornings. And look at that. Look at the color of that tea. Isn't that beautiful? That black, deep. They taste of the undergrowth, of piled leaves and under an old oak tree. Smell like it too. And if you look you can't see this, but sometimes when you look into the cup of an old pu'er tea like this, you will see these striations, these magical pearlescent fractal shapes as the oils in the tea are released, and they form these incredible mystical dragon's pearls. And then we drink them, and all that beautiful spiraling energy goes into the body and into the belly, and into the body as a means of healing society is this is about embodiment, and contemplation, and that's my main teaching. And I love doing these little tea gatherings because it's autumn now in the UK, and I live in Devon in the UK, and it gets dark earlier and the nights get longer, and it's a perfect time for contemplatives. If you happen to be in the southern hemisphere, you're in the different ascension. You are like in the full on summering energy that's expansion. But for me here right now, I'm going to be in the inward gathering, and so I'm drinking dark teas to help me go into the winter spirit. So I thought, as I was thinking about this, what I wanted to say today, just earlier, I started to think of my mother and my father, and I started to think of when I first started to write this book. And it first began shortly after my father died, and that was several years ago now, and that what it reminded me of is two trees in the garden that I grew up in. I was very privileged, beautiful childhood that I had in Berkshire in England, in the UK, and it was a very beautiful garden that we had, and surrounded by woodland. And in that garden were two very memorable trees, and one of them was a willow tree, a weeping willow. It was a huge weeping willow, and I remember it as a child. I used to play and run under it, and to me that tree was always my mother. And then my mother died, and that tree died as well. And the other tree was a Wellingtonia, a redwood. It was an ornamental redwood. It had been planted 100 years or so before, and it was really tall and the opposite of a willow tree. It was like tall and huge, and as a boy I would look up and I couldn't see the top of it, and it was the biggest tree in the world, and it was very tall. And that tree slowly died as well. I think that it was lonely, actually. I think those trees particularly like having other trees around them, other redwoods. And shortly after it died, my father died. And so these two incredible trees, which for me were my parents, who were very loving towards me. I mean, it wasn't a perfect childhood, but they were very loving, especially as they got older and softer and mellowed. And that when my father died, it was during COVID. Um, After he died, I'd been wanting to deal with that tree because it was right next to the house and it had died. And if there had been a storm, it could have been a danger to the house. But he didn't want to deal with it. He didn't want it taken down. And then when he died, it was one of the first things I did was find a tree surgeon to come in. And about a week after he died, that tree was taken down. And it was quite a thing watching them take it down because it was, hundreds of feet high. And then there was this stump left. And it was just this low stump, huge stump. And one morning, as I was staying in the house where I'd grown up, with my, as a little boy, with my brother and sister, I went out there early in the morning to have my tea before dawn, which is what I do. And I went out there and I took a chair and I put it on the tree stump. and a little candle in a lantern because it was a bit windy and cold. And I sat there with my tea on the tree of my father. And as I sat there, a sutra, a short piece of poetry came into my mind. And I went to get a piece of paper and write it down. And it was the first sutra I wrote for this book. And I knew I was writing the book because I'd already been gathering interesting terminology for several years to name the lines. There's 384 lines in the original I Ching, right? And they are all little acupuncture points of consciousness. And anyone who knows the I Ching will know that from exploring it. And my I Ching is completely different. It's a new kind of I Ching. I didn't very rarely referred to any original I Chings, although I did study with a great I Ching teacher when I was younger. Hua Ching Ni, his name is, Master Ni. And it's lovely to mention him. He wrote a beautiful book on the I Ching. Hua Ching Ni. Someone can maybe find that. And so I found myself writing this I Ching, and I'd written the first sutra. A sutra is an Indian poem, like a little poem fragment. It's a word. It means a thread. Sutra means a thread. And so I started to thread these little word codes and koans every morning at dawn, before dawn, always outside. I wrote one, just one. Maybe I missed a day or two, but pretty much I was out there every day for over a year writing these sutras, and they just came, and I didn't know which lines of the I Ching they related to. That came later, and I wrote them in this book here, this big leather green book that my father gave me. It's got my initials on it there. It was an empty book, and I just filled it with these sutras, handwritten in a random order. And this is the first sutra I wrote, and it was after my father died. It's called you may have heard it because I published it at some point on our Pulse. The Noble Tangency of Loss. The Noble Tangency of Loss. A great era has ended. The death of a patriarch invites a startling vision of intimacy, a bright new shape from the kind old clay. A great era has ended. The death of a patriarch invites a startling vision of intimacy, a bright new shape from the kind old clay. And, I felt this rebirth coming out of the death of my parents and my father. And later I discovered that this was Gene Keys 22, line 4, but it took me a long time to figure out which one was which. And some of you may have that one in your profile and be interested in that. So I'm going to do my first apology. British always are apologizing for things, so you'll have to forgive me for that. And I'm going to inflict a pair of poems on you because these are what I wrote when my parents died. And when my mother died, I wrote a poem and I read it at her funeral. And when my father died, I also wrote a poem and I read it at his memorial service. And they're the only poems I'm going to read. I might read another sutra, but those are kind of easy because they're only 4 lines and they're kind of mystic. And I think I'll do my father first. And they're short, these really. They're just 2 pages. This is my book of it's called A Spring of Dreams, selected poetry by me. And it's got lovely illustrations by Jane Addams. My father. My father was a generous man. Through life with gentle ease he flowed, and his deeds were the seeds he softly sowed. A gardener soul, he tended his hours to yield a field of fragrant flowers. My father was a diligent man. As a boy through upper meadows he stole, planting his oaken dreams in our soul. And in a land of gathering clouds and clay, His impeccable legacy illumines our way. My father was an exceptional man. On the surface, mild-mannered, he was modest and wise, lived a life of great soul in delicate guise, of invisible virtues and stories untold, but beneath it he shimmered vermilion gold. My father was a daring man, entrepreneurial, an English pioneer, a gentleman racer beneath a gracious veneer. But his greatest mastery, truth to be told, were the friendships he fostered all over the world. My father was a thoughtful man. He placed others before him, devoted his life to serving community, family, and wife. An anchoring presence, uncommon to rile, we cherish your solace and treasure your smile. My father is a wonderful man. He lives now in our hearts where his seeds are still growing, imparting his wisdom with the same gentle knowing. Humble and noble, you always see clearly, but we miss you and love you so very, very dearly. Precious man. He lived in a place, his childhood house was called Upper Meadow, and therefore I wove that into one of the verses. My mother was from the Channel Islands, the Isle of Guernsey, for those of you who know where those are. They're in between UK and France. She was, anyway, my mother was an island girl with golden whirls and shell-shaped curls that frothed and furled and seemed to me to echo with the seasons of a sea-green sea. Long-running beach-running legs had she, honeyed by 100 summering dreams of the sea, and a pair of piercing blues were set in a face where the rivers of her friends had met. My mother was the whole wide world, when a boy from the shoals of his dreams was hurled. By night, on soft-set lioness paws she came, and her voice was soft as a rose-petal rain. And in those rising days of the laughing sap, my heaven and my haven was her rolling lap. On waylaid waves the memories arise, a boy and his mummy, under pale parchment skies. My mother was a friend to life, doted upon, a devoted wife. She wore her smile like an old straw hat, which I line with violets. She would have liked that. It's easy to remember both the sweet and the good, but my mother was more. She had temper and mood, impatience, yearning, will and passion. She was roses and thorns, wind upon ocean. Dear mother, you are more than the memories lying on our shelves, more than a dusty gathering gallery of selves. A golden girl, a fine-figured lady, a weathered old woman, a new-born late baby. These were but the passing texture of your days, days that have passed now, but one thing that stays, born from the passion that you brought from the start, is the friend-giving warmth of your life-living heart. In her heart, my mother was an island girl, with golden whirls and shell-shaped curls that frothed and furled and seemed to me to echo with the seasons of a sea-green sea. It's really nice to share something intimate with you, my community. I don't think I've ever spoken to my parents before, so it's a nice thing to honour them here. And, you know, this is about the body and being in the body and incarnating, and a lot of that is to do with our families and our friends and how much of ourselves we bring into the body and into the world. And I'm going to have another cup of tea after that. A little pause. Pause for tea. Some people ask who the little figure is here. This is St. Francis. It belonged to my uncle who was killed in the Second World War in Italy. And this was found in his pocket. He'd been to Assisi and he'd obviously bought it, and he kept it close to him during the campaign. So I keep it close to me as a memory of his sacrifice. Wow, we're really doing the ancestors today. It's as it should be in the autumn as the light fades. So, what next? So that was how the Sage began the book, and then it grew and it grew, and I finished it fairly recently. The main body of the work. I haven't written an introduction yet. That always comes last. Forgive me for a moment. So, shall I pick a random sage from the book? And we'll take this as like a springboard for the rest of the conversation, the dialogue, the monologue, that will act as a sutra, a thread that we can follow. And as I sort of drop into different reveries with you and share a little bit about where the Sage as a book and its transmission is taking us. Oh, here's a nice one. You'll like this one. 55, line 3. Instructions for riding a whirlwind. Before a whirlwind, do not tie things down. Rather loosen everything off, open all doors, take the windows off their hinges, and lay. Well, this is actually this one's longer than the one that's been edited. Take the doors off their hinges, lay your dreams in the open grass. Then when she arrives, you will have nothing to lose. Instructions for riding a whirlwind. Before a whirlwind, do not tie things down. Rather loosen everything off, open all doors, take the windows off their hinges, and lay your dreams in the open grass. Then, when she arrives, you will have nothing to lose. Yeah, so some of these have been a bit edited since then, but I love that one because it's about where we're going as a species. You know, it's about, Gene Keys 55 is taking us through this portal into 2027, which is a mystic year, a mystic, transitionary, huge, epochal, shifting, quantum leap year. And I don't know what's going to happen in that year. Maybe nothing, maybe a lot, maybe a crisis, maybe something beautiful, maybe all of those things. But by the end of that year, a big shift at some deep psychic transmission level will have occurred. And something old will then start to decline more rapidly. And something new will then start to bud and grow. And I'll talk about this more in our next tea because it's about 2026, the year of the closing door. But it's a seed that I can sow, for that. It's about this incredible transition period that we're in. And it's why I'm having these tea parties, and it's why I finished this book, The Sage, and then I'm also putting on this huge long retreat next year and into 2027, the Sage's Golden Path Retreat. It's an online retreat. It's 3 retreats in one: 4 months, a gap of a month; 6 months, a gap of a month; and then 4 months. And the first one is about purpose, the second one is about love, and the third one is about prosperity. And they all link as a weave together. And some of you know already the Golden Path teachings, and some of you have read the books or heard of it or done the free programs. If you have not done one of our retreats, our online retreats, now is the chance. Starts in January, and it's going to be epic. it runs along in the background of your life. Whatever else is going on, you can be studying many things at the same time. You can be doing whatever. These retreats kind of don't take over your life, but they do underpin your life, and they pour in the fragrance, the quintessence of the Gene Keys that you absorb like a kind of homeopathic dose on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, depending on your capacity, depending on your life and how it works. That's how our online retreats operate. So I am here to kind of, not to advertise it, but just to invite you to come with me on the journey, because it's a big, deep, rich, long, powerful journey, a journey of transformation. And transformation, as a friend said to me earlier today, doesn't happen in a weekend in a hotel room. It happens in your life over a long period of time, with bursts and epiphanies that well up in the cracks of your life. And so we've created at Gene Keys these online retreats whose sole purpose is to drip, drip, drip this transmission of truth through every Gene Key into your life through a sequence that you follow along with a couple of thousand other people, probably all around the world, following their golden path, as it's called, understanding and imbibing the deep teachings of the Gene Keys, which are not a knowledge system, they are a wisdom system. And a knowledge system is completely different. A knowledge system is of the mind. You take it in, you learn, it's like school. A wisdom system is mystical. It triggers and fires and catalyzes and seduces the wisdom that's already inside you to emerge. So it's a kind of journey of epiphany. It's a journey of the unfolding of revelations that are hidden in the body, that are hidden in the biome, they're hidden in the cells, in the DNA, the deep mystical memories of who you truly are, of your soul. Those cannot be reached with knowledge. They cannot be. It doesn't matter. The world is obsessed with knowledge, right? And it's wonderful because knowledge takes us to wonderful places and inventions and science and everything and AI and all of it. But that's not of the same dimension as wisdom. Wisdom is inside us. It's in the body. This is why the body is actually the vessel, the means of healing the world, because the wisdom is in the body. It's in the bones. Our ancestors really knew this. They know this. Our indigenous people really know this, and they're desperate for us to kind of realize it. That's why they call us sometimes their younger brother. They're looking at us and, almost not with pity, but with, fondness and patience, and sometimes I'm sure exasperation because of how we treat ourselves really and each other, and of course Gaia. So on the same page, this is nice, since I opened it on that page, there's 3 sutras on each page. So I think I'll just pick the other ones and we'll see where they go. Look for me in the taverns. Look for me in the taverns of the world. There you will find me in the roar, drunk on birdsong, wheeling in the company of thieves. Look for me in the taverns of the world. There you will find me in the roar, drunk on birdsong, wheeling in the company of thieves. Gene Key 10, line 3, another line 3. And there's a note at the bottom. This is about intoxication and integration, reminding me of Hafiz, the great mystic poet Hafiz. The thief is also a symbol in mystical literature. He shows that you must break into your heart. You must break into your heart. That's what the thief really represents. And open deeper to the world, giving up your possessions and attachments. It's not literal. Integrate the seemingly negative. I like looking at my notes, actually. It's interesting. So I've obviously written these into my book, and then I've written a commentary or a contemplation on every single one, which will include notes like that. So look for me in the taverns of the world. This is a again going into the body. The body. There you will find me in the raw. We are wild creatures. We are raw creatures. We are not these sort of, delicate, sort of wafty, mental only creatures. We're wild. We're pagans at the core. All of us. We're earth beings. And the deeper we go into the earth and the elements of the earth, and the more we listen and pause and we imbibe the contemplations of nature, then the more we realize that it's, drunk on birdsong. Drunk. You ever been up at dawn? Have you ever been up before dawn when the birds really go for it? The dawn chorus. That's an epic thing. You have to be up at like 4 a.m. in the summer for that to really catch, in England anyway. You get this unfeasible racket of harmony and riot, cacophony of rhapsodic symphony. You do get drunk on it, drunk on birdsong. It's a symbol, about, giving yourself to nature, trusting the body, loving the body, wheeling in the company of thieves. Yeah. Also suggestive of someone that really isn't afraid of the shadow, who is willing to go deep into the shadow. Which, of course, is what the Gene Keys is all based on. We start with the shadow. And my book, The Sage, this book, it actually, one of the unique things about it as an I Ching or as a verse, it's not really an I Ching, but, in that tradition, is that it has all the shadows stripped out of it. It doesn't have any shadow. My Gene Keys book is filled with the shadow. Most of my teachings are filled with the shadow. This book has no shadow. It has the occasional reference, but it's a fond reference, but there's no pain and suffering in it. It's the book of the future human. I wanted to write a book that would hold us through this transition, that we would have a handbook of this is the codex of our future being. So you can't get a negative one. You only get these gems, these uncut sometimes beautiful gems of wisdom that you can then contemplate and go into in depth. And remember, these are I'm just reading you the sutras. I'm not reading you the lines. The lines are separate. I might read you one in a minute so you get an idea of like how that works. But one more. 28 line 5, Bardo. Injustice, one of the last great illusions. Trust even in this, that when death comes, true justice is served and the grace is revealed. Injustice, one of the last great illusions. Trust even in this, that when death comes, true justice is served and the grace is revealed. It's a wormhole, that one. I'm not sure I want to go down it because, injustice and justice are such deeply human, delicate, vulnerable subjects, because it crosses over all our moralities. And yet here, from the highest self, we are told by the sage, injustice is an illusion. There is no injustice, because written into the codex of existence is an underpinning justice that we can't see. It's invisible, but and yet we don't understand it at the human level because we're only looking from the finite through linear time. So when we see something that seems like an injustice, or someone that's got away with something and was never punished for it, which we see all the time, right, in the press or otherwise, we don't realize that there's a deeper vein of justice that we can possibly comprehend that transcends death. And this drops into some of the deep teachings of karma and fate and the Vedas and Sanskrit and the understanding of the old deep esoteric religions, as my little note here, let go of injustice. It matters, but it doesn't matter. The bardo is the in-between state between lives. The bardo levels all bumps. So if there's a bump, like justice can be a bump, and just like the bardos just clean it all out. So when we go through, it's said that in between lives, after our life, depending on what we've done, we meet everything, every act, from near-death experiences, we meet every act that we have done, every thought that we've had, every word that we have spoken. We meet it back again as though it were though we were on the receiving end of our own life. So if we've done a lot of bad things, we feel, we don't just, because we don't have the physical body anymore, but we do have emotion. We have the remnants of the emotional equipment in our etheric vehicle. So we feel every pain that we've caused. This is what is said by the mystics. We feel every, and people have come back from the dead, we feel every pain that we have caused and magnified 1,000-fold because we don't have a physical body to filter it anymore. And so it feels like it might be eternal. And perhaps that's where the notion of eternal damnation comes from. Because as you're going through the bardo, there's no time. And so if you're experiencing that karmic residue coming back into you through a subtle body that you're inhabiting, it could feel like it will last forever until you've felt it, until it has been, there isn't really an until you've absorbed it, soaked it, learned from it, and then you're done with it. And then you're like, you carry on. Something like that. So there's beautiful deep teachings, and every part of the sage goes down, every line goes down a wormhole of some form that you can then follow and contemplate. And it leads sometimes to different teachings. So one thing I will do, because I said I would, is read you a line. So you have an example. I'm just going to pick one at random. Here we go, going in randomly. Well, I'll tell you what. Here's some bit of fun. Send in your lines. Like if you've got a gene key and a line, if you're on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, just post a gene key and a line that you want me to read. I'm only going to read one, and then the girls, Emily and Katrini, who are like fielding you all, are going to like send me one. They're going to send me one line. It's going to be randomly chosen, and I'll get it on my phone, and then I'll read that line. How's that for fun? Who's it going to be? Aha! Thank you, Katrini. Katrini, a wonderful, amazing, beautiful woman living in Russia, and one of our incredible hosts, and Gene Keys ambassador. 61 line 1. Nice choice. Whoever that was that put that in, and let's read you. Let's see about 61 line 1. I wonder what that is. 61 line 1 coming up. Here we go. Lovely. Krishna's flute. The first sacred music heard by humanity. So every line has a mythic coding. Krishna's flute, the first sacred music heard by humanity. And the sutra, patinas of the gods. I the breath, you the flute, we the music. Eternal lovers, you and I. Patinas of the gods. I the breath, you the flute, we the music. Eternal lovers, you and I. Krishna's flute. And I'll read you the contemplation. I'll read you the whole thing so you know how these are structured. Here in this line, we come into sacred communion with the dawn of humanity, and perhaps even of our local universe. Long ago, at the dawn of time, there lived a form of early humanity, and among them was a divine being, who later became known as Krishna. Krishna, with his ecstatic flute playing, sang us into being. The mystery of the myth of this avatar has many layers. Some believe he was a historical personality, some a legend. As a contemplative icon, He opens up a stream of transmissions that unfold within the contemplator. The nature of these are musical and devotional, rising on the rhythm of the breath. There's a strong invitation here to explore these transmissions in one's own way, and perhaps even hear a fragment of that first awe-inspiring music. Gene Key 61 is a magical key, right? It's the mystic. And then each one has an oracle. So if you were using this, if you were asking the sage, tell me, I've got this problem, I've got this decision I'm trying to make, and then you throw the sage, and it'll be in our app next year. You can click the sage, and it will then deliver you a piece of wisdom, oracular wisdom. And this is what you might get. I've got this problem. Music may hold the answer to your current challenges. Music, sound, breath, poetry, and song elevate our spirit, reminding us of who and what we are and why we're experiencing the world the way we are. The soul inhabits music as a fish lives in water. Soothe yourself with the delicate, sonorous tones and cadences of music that touches your soul. Like Krishna, allow yourself to be lifted by the haunting tones of the first music. Breathe yourself into the field of higher frequencies until you find yourself hanging there in the devotional silence. And let your worries and concerns drop away for a time. And when you return, all will have changed. Nice, beautiful. And then there's the third paragraph, which is called the mythos. And the mythos is if you have this line, which I presume this person does in their profile, or perhaps in your human design, if you work with human design, you have 61 line 1 somewhere. Or if you're new to the Gene Keys, you can go and get your profile on genekeys.com and have a look at your lines and your Gene Keys. And this is an example of what your mythos might be if you had 61 line 1. Your life will be bound up with the musical nature of being. Your deepest meditations will come through music. Your problems can all be solved through music. Your soul is saturated with the music of being. Music is why you came here. In this life, therefore, you will need to find a way into this question of who you are, using sound, music, and devotion. You will find that music underpins everything: science, art, health, service, relationships, business. Whatever field you move through, hear it through the lens of the musical gift that lives in your soul. Lives in your soul. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, what you see here is in this wisdom is a fractal wisdom. So it actually applies to all of us, right? But that's just as very specific. You know, if you have that particular one, it's going to open up something for you. But this is true for all of us as well. You know, and there's a final part in these, which a one-liner, which is called the event horizon, which will go into our app. That when the sun moves through Gene Key 61 line 1, that's called the event horizon, and it triggers a specific energy. So I can't remember when that is, but you can look it up in your Gene Keys ephemeris, or if you happen to know, a day for making music. All right. So whenever the sun moves through that hexagram, that Gene Key, and that line, great day for making music, listening to or creating beautiful music that elevates frequency and lifts us into a higher world. That's it. And there's some links as well in here that lead us into the Krishna vibe, you know, the Krishna energy. There's some nice links of things that I've found over the years about Krishna. So there's an example of a sage key. And also, if you want to come on the retreat with me next year, you will get all your lines. You know, you will be the first of the community to receive your lines inside your program, so they're activated by your Gene Keys Golden Path program. So you'll get all your lines. So if you do the activation sequence, you'll get your 4 lines. They'll be unraveled in a sequence, and then you get the rest of them as well. You'll get may not get you won't get the oracle, and you'll get the mythos, and you'll get the sutras, and the rest I'm saving for the book. So let's have another cup of tea. I'm sure you're full of questions. 61 line 1, huh? Who knew? I was sort of wishing I had some music in the background, but maybe you do. The third cup. The third is the charm, as they say in Ireland. So I thought I'd dip into like one of these books, like to give you a sense of what's coming. I don't know if you know the Golden Path teachings, but here's an example of the sort of stuff you might discover if you dive into our rich programs. The activation sequence. Activation sequence is the first of the 4 journeys, the 3 journeys. The activation sequence is about discovering our genius in life. This genius, as we'll see, is less about a role or a skill and more about a quality of consciousness. It emerges as a rush that passes through the physical body. There we have it again, the physical body. These are physical embodiment teachings, somatic teachings. How it's experienced is up to the individual. For some, it comes all in one go, whereas for others, it emerges over time. For most people, the breakthrough is an ongoing process. It's a breaking through that comes and goes as your contemplation deepens. Some breakthroughs are experienced as mental insights. For example, a breakthrough where a pattern of denial suddenly comes to an end. Other breakthroughs seem purely emotional and can lead to intense emotional states and feelings, often accompanied by fears. However you experience your breakthrough, you should know that it is primarily physical. It begins as an explosion of light somewhere in the cellular world within. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing that that's how transformation works? Transformation works as a cellular explosion that takes place within, and then it comes out somewhere in our psyche, somewhere in our being. You know, it's a somatic experience. And then in the Golden Path teachings we're doing next year, for the whole year, we're going to bring a very strong somatic embodied focus. So I'm going to be teaching the stuff, and others are going to be teaching like embodied exercises. I'm going to be drawing stuff from all kinds of areas in the Gene Keys synthesis to help us embody things, embody the breakthroughs that we are dealing with. So I'm kind of excited. You can tell I'm a bit like wired by it, not in a kind of, unhealthy way, just in a passionate way. Okay, one more tea. What do you think? What are we doing? How are we doing for time? I think I'm going to open for some questions. So if you want to ask anything, fire away. We've got 10 minutes left. Katrina just sent in a whole load more lines. Can I read? Sorry, guys, you'll have to wait. Come on the path. Dear Richard, Katerina, dear Richard, drawn to this conversation, having been close to death on 5 occasions, most recently via severe obstructive sleep apnea, wherein my body systems were failing. Can you speak to this? Oh, Katerina, so sorry to hear you're going through those difficulties. You know, so many of us have sleep problems in this kind of modern world of neon lighting and false time schedules and numbered realities, where we are pressured and stressed by the numbering of our lives, and I don't, it's a phase of our evolution, and it's very difficult for the soft animal of the body, that really wants to be out in the wilds and on the earth. It's very difficult for us to adjust and acclimatize to just the pulse of the earth itself, the raw pulse of the earth and the body. And so, that might be a contemplation that you could follow, Katerina. You know, like, how can you connect to the biorhythm of the earth and hear the pulse of the earth deeper in your body, and maybe sleep on the earth, maybe rest on the earth, maybe take your shoes and socks off and go out in the dark. And one of the things I always say that is so good for our soul is rising as the sun rises and as the sun sets, you know, turning within. And obviously devices and all that kind of stuff like really mess with us. I mean, we all know this, right? We all know this. We don't always do something about it until it really causes us harm. And I'm sure that you kind of know this as well, Katerina. And, you know, people can give you a million, you know, there's probably a million experts on this call sending you, yeah, take this, do that. My invitation is about the body and the earth, and get closer to the earth. Get your hands in the earth, get your hands in the soil and the biome daily, and really imbibe the beautiful healing energy of the earth and the trees and the leaves and the plants and the animals, and listen to their biorhythms, and spend as much time as you can around the natural world and its changing cycles, and find a place on the earth where you feel at home, that suits your biome, that suits your biorhythm, you know, and food that suits your biome and suits your biorhythm, and, you know, not something that someone has told you, some expert, you've got to eat this and this and do that diet and this diet. Okay, that can be helpful, of course it can be helpful, and there are a lot of experts that know their stuff. But ultimately, you're going to have to come right back down to the intuition and the body. Like, well, what is my body? What settles my body? What time should I have that will settle my body, so that I can enter into, you know, my sleep in a way where the body feels at rest and at peace and calm. And then I wouldn't, you know, what I would offer you is not even to give yourself the pressure of having to change it, because if you have that pressure, sometimes it has to get better. That pressure is an extra pressure that we put on ourselves, and sometimes just being with the issue 100%, you know, and its discomfort can be very therapeutic. Just listening to your body and trusting your body. Um, yeah, perhaps not the best advice you've been given, but the best I can do at this time. I hope it maybe resonates for you. Um, got another one from Instagram. Hi everyone on Instagram, so lovely that you dialed in. And also, if you're dialing in not live, later, hello. I've been drawn deeply to simplicity and living the magic of enough rather than more. What are your contemplations on enoughness? Oh, what a great word, enoughness. I don't think I've ever said that word. Everyone say it, enoughness. Isn't that a great word? It's a fantastic mantra for humans. I imbibe enoughness. I am enough. My body is enough. My life is enough in itself. It's a beautiful word. Thank you so much. I don't know who you were, but it's really lovely. That's exactly what contemplation is all about. Contemplation provides the arena so that we can feel that enoughness. And it's also jumping out of Katerina's question, like, can you surround yourself in that energy of enoughness, you know, and can we all find more enoughness so that we don't have to pressure ourselves to attain? Now, I say that, and the soul also, part of the soul, especially the younger part, loves to attain stuff and loves to go after stuff and loves to set goals and follow its dreams. And that's also a part of who we are. So we can't ever, that's where our passion comes from. We can't ever throw that away. And yet, at a certain stage, at a certain level of our soul's maturity, we do come into enoughness. It's a realization that dawns. Many people I know, and many very wealthy people I've met, like they realized that they had enoughness one time, and now they've lost it. And so many of them get rid of all their stuff and come back to a simpler way of being. And it's something, but we still have to follow our star. So it's a very mature insight, I would say, enoughness. Thank you for that. What else have we got here? Hundreds of them, hundreds of the belators. Dan Halpern. And we only have 5 minutes, so this might be the last one. Watching your videos, here's a small question. Could you please clarify your sense of our current Yuga, Kali, Dwapara, and how long these epochs last? Thanks for all your offerings, blessed be. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Yugas are vast time spans, kind of tracked and measured by the Vedic cultures of ancient India. And there's a lot of stuff around yugas, and there are books appearing all the time by people, experts on yugas who've done a lot of deep research. My understanding of the yugas, I did a video a while back called the solar plexus and the sixth race. You probably find it on YouTube, and there's a map in there of my version of the yugas, my understanding. And it probably time I updated it because it was a long time ago. But I took my understanding from Sri Yukteswar, and Sri Yukteswar was an incredible sage. I mean, you want to find a real sage, you don't have to go any further than Sri Yukteswar. He wrote this one beautiful little book. I mean, I love it when a sage writes only one book. I wish I could have done that. Because you know that their whole life gem is going to be in it. And what's the name of his book? Maybe it'll come to me. It's very short and very beautiful. It was written in Sanskrit, and then it was translated very nicely. And a classic spiritual piece of literature. And he talks about the yugas. And what he says, because he was Yogananda's teacher, master. And what he says is there was a mistake made in the ancient calculations of the mathematics. And that mistake then crept into all the following interpretations of the yugas. So what we have is some people say that the Kali Yuga, which is the dark age, is so long that we have another 435,000 years left of it. It's like, Jesus, that is really not good news, right? What he does, so he corrects that mistake. He is a mathematician of epic proportions. His mind, he's known as a Jnani yoga, which means he's a yogi of the mind, of the mental plane, an incredibly sharp intellect. And so what he does is he sets this straight in this little book, and you can track it. And so he shows us his version is we left Kali Yuga, I think around the dark ages of humanity. And then Dwapara Yuga is the next one. It's where the cycle of the yugas begins to ascend. So it descends as humanity. So humanity begins in Satya Yuga, which is the enlightened, ancient, perfect heaven on earth at the beginning of time. Krishna's flute. And then we fell from grace, and the yugas descend. And the ancients say we lost track with the Dharma. So the Dharma, which is our connection to the truth thread of our being, goes further and further away, and then we get to the bottom point, the nadir, which is the Kali Yuga, and then we start to ascend through Dwapara Yuga, which is the ascension time, and then we move into Treta Yuga. There's only 4 yugas, but they're a spiral, so they kind of go into each other. If you watch that video of mine, I actually draw it as a spiral, and it's really interesting. So according to Yukteswar, we're in the Dwapara Yuga, and we're right in the middle of it. And there's another very good book that comes off his this book, and it's called The Yugas. And Joseph Selby, Selbie, I really recommend it. It's a fantastic read. 2 guys write it. I can't remember the other guy. They did a huge amount of research into Yukteswar. They were obviously disciples of his. And they wrote this brilliant treatise, and it's it's very human. They analyze history through it, and they show us this pattern of the descending arc and the ascending arc, and how we are now on the rising. And it's why science is leading us back towards magic. So on the descending, it was like we fell through magic, so magic was our way. We called it magic, but it was our way of where we lost touch with the truth, and it became magic, and then it became religion. And then religion, as it started to, the organized religion, as it started to fade, it became science. And science is the reclaiming of the magic. So you have science and magic opposite each other. And even now, you might look at AI and things like that, and you think, wow, this is incredibly magical and powerful. And how the quantum universe works is very magical. And so we're kind of reclaiming through the intellect now the magical universe, the vision of the universe. And we're going to have to, at some point, go in the next yuga, go beyond the mind, the sort of logical mind, so that we can enter into the wisdom mind and return back to Krishna's flute, where the very first sounds of the universe began. So there's this beautiful cycle. And I really recommend that book on the yugas, because it places us very accurately in the context. And it fits perfectly with the Gene Keys prophecy, which is, we're in the ascended arc, and we're moving through this kind of pinch point that has a correspondence across the arc with what we call the fall of humanity, right? The fall of Atlantis, you could say, and it's in there. It's like the fall of Atlantis. And on the other side of the arc is the rise, and these are breakthrough points. They're node points. Huge shifts, great changes in the program. There's two of them. And we're at the great change at the other side, where suddenly everything accelerates. And Dwapara Yuga, that's what it does. It accelerates. Because when we reach Treta Yuga, which is the next one, which is in another 800 to 1,000 years, I believe, or something like that, and we're going to get there fast, when we get there, we're back in the magical universe. We are living in the field of magic again. And it's funny, because I'll finish with this, right? I had a dream last night, and I don't often have dream recall at that level, and this was a top shelf dream. I call them top shelf dreams. They come occasionally, and they wake you up, and you're in them, and you're like, whoa, whoa, and they go on. It's like you're in this field, and it's so powerful. And it was a dream of nodal consciousness, where I experienced my consciousness as a node, and then it was connected to other nodes in other beings and other humans. And because it was connected, I knew I had all the information of that other node through the network. So I knew everything about that person, everything, their soul, their problems, their thoughts, their feelings, their hidden secrets. It was all completely transparent, because it was coming through the network. And my node picked it up, and my network was also completely open to them. And there was hundreds of these, and they were all network consciousness. And I had that experience as a memory of when I woke up in the middle of the night. That's where we're going. We're moving in Dwapara Yuga into this deeper network consciousness. It's not in the head, actually. I mean, I may be pointing to my head, but it's actually in the belly. So I want to finish this embodied call about how we use the body as a means of healing society by dropping into the belly, in the biome down here. This is where we can attain networked consciousness, down in the solar plexus. If you know human design, you'll know the prophecy that Ra made from human design, that the solar plexus center, not the kind of chakra version, but this center here, this biome, which has more DNA in it than the rest of the body combined. 95% of our DNA is in the gut. This is where the future awareness lives. It's where we are going to be able to experience a networked nodal consciousness through the belly. And the belly is the umbilicus, right? It's where we connect to the source of being, the Dantian, the Hara, an ancient understanding from our ancestors. And it's how we connect with the future human that's coming into the world. So, lovely things to think of. It was absolutely delightful having tea with you all. and I look forward to doing it again. If you're interested in taking this a step further, check out the links to the Sage's Golden Path retreats. Please consider coming along. And this is the kind of journey we're going to have together. I've had all these books beside me, and next time I'll drop into a few more and show you how I'm going to weave aspects of the Gene Keys synthesis into this year-long retreat or series of retreats. You know, remember the first one's 4 months, so you can just take a bite and see if you enjoy it. And if you want to do the next ones, you can always decide that. But some people know, yep, I'm in for the whole thing. And I'm going to weave in all these other aspects of the Gene Keys, because Gene Keys isn't just about profiles and Gene Keys and lines. It has many other layers to it. So hope you enjoyed your tea. Sorry I went on 5 minutes longer than an hour, but I'm sure you'll forgive me. And I have to end with an apology because I began with one, and I do like symmetry. So sending you my blessings and my love, and thank you so much for joining me, whatever you were on, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Really, really enjoyed sharing with you. And next time I will be here in the next tea party, and we're going to discuss 2026, the year of the closing door. And it's going to be rich and juicy, and I'll have more insights from the sage, and we will just follow the sutras and the strings and the threads as we've done here. So enough words from me. Blessings, and be well wherever